Hi, my name is Virginia Robbins, and I am an IBCLC, an internationally board-certified lactation consultant, and I am your breastfeeding guru. The first video I'd like to start with is addressing preparing for breastfeeding when you're pregnant. Most of us do a lot of preparing for the baby, and we have onesies and slings and all kinds of gadgets. We do have a book, and it says something about breastfeeding somewhere, and sometimes we skim that, but most of the time it's a pretty much hands-on learning type of skill. There are some things that you can do to prepare. One of the things that I suggest is read a really good breastfeeding book. One of those would be The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding by the Leche League, or one of Jack Newman's breastfeeding books. Do not read What to Expect When You're Expecting or any of the spoof versions of breastfeeding unless you have all the bases covered already. Now, the reason you'll want to read a good breastfeeding book is because most of us have not grown up in the American culture learning what is normal for the breastfeeding baby. Even to the extent that our hospital staff oftentimes does not have adequate information. What that means is that read that book, pick it up. You need to know how often that baby needs to eat. Do we do 10 minutes on each side and then switch? What positions do I use for large breasts, small breasts? My mom couldn't breastfeed me. My last baby, my milk dried up. Whatever it may be, get some basic knowledge. Knowledge is power when it comes to breastfeeding. Another way for you to get a lot of information, and it's free, is to attend your local chapter of the Leche League. I'm going to have that link in the bottom of the description of this video. Find them. As soon as you find out you're pregnant, start going, because you're going to get the benefit of women from all walks of life, women that have small babies nursing, who have 10 children and are nursing their 3-year-old. You're going to get to see the big variety of breastfeeding, which is something that we don't get exposed to. We don't get exposed to what's normal. The first time I walked into a Leche League meeting, the leader was nursing her 3-year-old, and I almost passed out. I'd never seen a breastfeeding mom except for my sister, who was 19 and nursing her newborn. It was quite an experience, and I had a lot of judgments at the time. I won't go into it in this video, but the average weaning age around the world is between 4 and 5 years old. So to us, that blows our minds, but for human beings, it's normal. And I'm hoping that the more that you read, the more comfortable you'll become with your body and making decisions that are best for you and your baby. And that doesn't mean nursing until your child's 5. It means making an informed decision based on fact, not on what you saw on Friends episode of a birth and a breastfeeding experience, but reality. And we have to do that as mothers and as fathers. We have to make informed decisions. And this kind of brings me to the next topic, is your birth. Your decisions that you make in birth and how your birth progresses is going to have a huge impact on breastfeeding. Some of the most common problems are from the birth experience itself and its impact on the baby. And what that means is over 90% of our births are augmented in some way. A lot of times with epidurals or IV pain medications, or cesarean sections. None of these are normal as far as human physiology. So we end up with babies who are drugged or tired, are early, are supposed to be 10 pounds and come out 5. So we have lots of situations that arise due to the birth. So one of the #1 things you can do to prevent breastfeeding problems and to make sure breastfeeding gets off to a good start is have as natural a birth as possible. Now, some of you are running and screaming right now. They're saying, as soon as I walk in the door, I want the epidural right now. That's fine. If you have read and you've read the research and you know the risks and you know the benefits and you choose to get that epidural, then Virginia's behind you, okay? You do what's best for you. But you make that decision. Know a lot about birth. I find it interesting that in medical care, in our culture, and in many cultures, we're programmed to allow the medical staff to make decisions for us. This can be dangerous sometimes. And if not dangerous, it can be creating a situation that we don't actually want. Because when you leave the hospital with your cesarean section or with your natural birth that, went completely fine, you're going to be the one healing and coping and functioning with whatever decisions were made, whether you made them or not. So know the risk of induction, know the risk of epidural, know their benefits, because there are. I've worked in birth, I worked as a midwife, and I've also worked many years as a doula. And if you don't know what a doula is, I'm going to have some links at the end of the video. Go investigate it. Having a support person during labor lowers your risk of cesarean by about 50%. And that's pretty dramatic. And there's many other benefits, but again, I don't want to get off topic. So I'm going to also have a link to several books and websites to have you informed about your birthing decisions. And they are your decisions. A lot of times we don't recognize what we're getting into, or even if we do, or if we've had a good relationship with our doctors or midwives, things can come up, or alternative staff, or just situations that arise because birth is just one of those unpredictable things. And those decisions will affect you and your baby regarding breastfeeding. Some of the things that you'll really want to look into is with your provider, going over your birth plan. And there are some providers that will laugh at your birth plan, but it's your body and it's your baby. And if you walked into a car dealership, you wouldn't say, "You picked the best car for me because you're the professional here." And you wouldn't walk into the grocery store and say, you pick these ingredients for my meals because grocer, you're the professional here. You wouldn't go to a real estate agency and say, "You know a lot about houses. You pick out my house for me." So you don't go into the hospital and say, you pick out my birth for me. And you make decisions for my infant that I'm unaware of. Like these things don't make sense, and make sure that you recognize that, because in our culture, we are very much programmed to surrender. And some of the things that happen in birth because of the pain and the vulnerability and taking a human out of their natural setting and putting them in a strange place makes it a lot harder to make good decisions at the time. Again, that's why I recommend doulas or a very strong support person, because we are very vulnerable during labor. And it can be a beautiful experience. Just know that the closer you keep it to the way Mother Nature meant it to go, then the better your breastfeeding experience will probably start off. Some of you might be listening and saying, "Okay, listen, I have a scheduled cesarean, or have a breech baby, or have twins, or I know that I'm going in a situation where I'm going to have an induction, or I'm going to have a cesarean." And I say, okay, all right. If you've made that decision and you've researched it, or you have extenuating circumstances where this is going to have to happen, then there are things that you can also do to prepare. Some of those are by questioning some of the protocol. If you're having a cesarean, many times you can actually breastfeed the baby as soon as the surgery is over, even as they're sewing you up. And it actually continues the benefits of breastfeeding. One of the benefits of breastfeeding is that it will help your uterus contract and help prevent hemorrhage. So this is, an important thing, especially if you've had surgery. The other thing is just question everything. Question everything. If they want to put a monitor on you or an IV in you or a medication, question everything. Make sure that it's the best for you. Okay? Make sure it's the best for your baby. Everything in the hospital protocol, from babies being removed and taken to a nursery, we know for a fact that mothers and babies should not be separated. We know that when we do separate mother and baby, that the baby's stress hormones rise, that their blood pressure decreases in a negative way or increases in a negative way. Their body temperature drops and is harder to maintain. Breastfeeding doesn't get started off as well. We really want babies to latch the breast within the first hour, regardless of the birth. Now, obviously, there are some times that's just not an option, and there should be lactation staff at your hospital to help you if that's the case. Well, I don't want to be preachy. I just want you to take care of you mamas, because I've been working in lactation for 8 years, and I love it. But I hate how many sad stories I hear from moms who just don't get a good start in the hospital. If you are having trouble, get help immediately. A lot of times we've heard rumors or myths about it's supposed to hurt. Your nipples need to toughen up, and when they do, you'll be fine. No, breastfeeding should never hurt. It can be a little bit sensitive in the first couple of days. If it goes beyond sensitive, then we have a problem. So just call the lactation staff in, call the nurse in. If you've done like I've asked you to, and you've contacted your local allegedly, you can also call in a leader. Another great program for breastfeeding moms is the Breastfeeding Peer Counselors at WIC. So if you qualify for WIC, you also can work with the Breastfeeding Peer Counselors and take a breastfeeding class before the baby or babies are born. And you can also go to them if you are having any difficulties. And many of them are wonderful. You can give them a call. There's also private practice lactation consultants. Know what is available in your area. Right now, because of the new Affordable Health Care Act, lactation consultants are now being covered by many insurances. Right now, Aetna is covering private practice lactation consultants where there's no out-of-pocket cost to go see them. And many other insurance companies are probably going to follow suit. So this is a benefit that you have if you have insurance, and take advantage of it if you need it. Breastfeeding is one of the most important things that you will ever do for your child, because no matter who they grow up to be or how they grow up to eat or behave, they will be healthier for the rest of their lives because you put in the time and the investment of bonding with this child and giving them the antibodies and the nutrition that breastfeeding affords. I encourage you to take a look at my other video, which is the benefits of breastfeeding, because there are many, many benefits of breastfeeding. The last thing I want you to be aware of when you're planning to breastfeed and you're pregnant is a very small percentage of women have something called an inverted nipple. And what that is just there are adhesions in the nipple tissue, and it keeps it from stretching the way we would like. I'm going to put a link in the description. So if you think that maybe you have an inverted nipple, if it dimples in, or when you pinch behind the nipple on the areola, if it pulls in, then this link will give you some details as to what you can do to prevent problems. And that's it. So the rundown is, if you're pregnant and you are planning to breastfeed, and you're gonna breastfeed, because that's what we do, right? If you're pregnant planning to breastfeed, 1, read a good book. I'm giving you links. Been doing this for a long time. I'm mother to 5 breastfeeding children. I've been in lactation for 8 years. I'm an IBCLC. I worked as a midwife and as a doula. So I've got some good ones for you because I've read a lot of them. And there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad. And I'm going to give you what I've personally read and found to be the most helpful and the most informative. So once you've read that book, or at some point, start going to a La Leche League meeting or a breastfeeding support group. Get the knowledge ahead of time. Learn about your area, your hospitals, your care providers. Like I said, it's invaluable knowledge. Know about birth. Know the risks, benefits of everything. Speak to your care provider about them. Make those decisions. Again, I highly recommend getting a professional birth support called doula, because it will be a voice for you, carrying out your wishes even when you're vulnerable in a hospital setting. Keep the birth as natural as possible to have the best breastfeeding outcome. Once baby is here, if you're having any difficulties, get help early. Do not be a hero. This is not the time to be a hero. You get help. In other cultures, there are families and a whole tribal unit to support breastfeeding moms. And everyone has breastfed. And so there's tons of help and support, and it is more intuitive, more natural. In our culture, you're going to have to pull some people in and pull them in early. But you can do this. Hundreds of thousands of years of evolution proves that you can. You're here. Your line survived, which means that your line could give birth and could breastfeed. Less than 1% of women cannot produce adequate breast milk. And most of you know who you are. You know that there's a situation, a severe medical issue or breast deformity. But even those women who've had surgeries, most of them can breastfeed. Okay, so do it on your terms. I'm going to also give you a link to my website, not because I'm trying to get your business, but because I want you to see the reasons why you would see a lactation consultant. When do you pull in the big guns? Okay, because some of you are going to be in those categories. That you've had previous failed lactation failure, it was hormonal of some sort, you've had breast surgeries, you have true inversions. You're going to see this list and you're going to know, okay, you go ahead and contact a lactation consultant. And everyone else you can too if you want, but there's lots of good support in La Leche League and the WIC Peer Counseling Group. So it has been a pleasure to share this time with you. Peace.